The San Francisco Giants have been forced into an impossible decision. Which of these three guys is going to be on the 2026 roster, and which of them have played their last game in a Giants jersey? We are going to break all of that down here on SF Giants Digest. But before we do that, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button as we get things going into the offseason. We'll be breaking down all offseason rumors, trades, signings, everything of that sort. So make sure to subscribe here on SF Giants Digest as we will be breaking everything down. Now, getting into this one, the Giants have three free agents that, might have played their last game for the team in the conclusion of 2025. The first one being Justin Verlander, the second, Dominic Smith, and the third being Wilmer Flores. First off, Justin Verlander, no questions about what he has done with the baseball throughout his career. Obviously, one of the greatest starting pitchers of all time, and you see there at the bottom, the career regular season numbers are pretty amazing. Over 3,500 innings pitched, over 3,500 strikeouts, a career whip of 1.14, a career ERA in the low threes. With that many innings is just absolutely absurd. And Verlander ended up having a pretty strong season for the Giants. A 3.85 ERA in north of 150 innings, 137 strikeouts, a 1.36 whip, a really strong season for a guy who is pitching in Major League Baseball at the age of 42, which is just something we do not see anymore these days, especially with the high-octane stuff that pitchers have. We do not see a lot of older guys showing that they can still play in Major League Baseball in 2025. Now, the wins and losses is a little concerning, but it really wasn't his fault. I know earlier in the year he had it rough. He had a couple bad outings, some blow-ups, but his second half, he was arguably the best pitcher for the Giants throughout the second half. When Logan Webb had a really rough July, Verlander stepped up. When Robbie Ray had an awful September, Justin Verlander stepped up. So he really was the guy that kept this rotation afloat when there was injuries towards the back end of the year and some guys not performing to the peak of their performances. Now, the bullpen did sell some Verlander wins. I know he wanted to get closer to 200 wins, 300 wins, something that is pretty rare in MLB, and he's the last guy who will probably have the chance to do that. So that is why he has been clear he wants to keep playing. And Buster Posey was actually asked if there was interest in bringing back Justin Verlander. And he said, "Yeah, definitely." Posey said when asked whether his team would have interest in a reunion, "It's something we'll have to discuss, but we do for a multitude of reasons. He's been a great teammate. He's helped some of our younger guys learn how to prepare, and he just sets an example by going out and performing and continuing to show up. So yeah, it's definitely something we'd be open to." And I think this makes a lot of sense. Pitching is going to be the focus for the Giants this offseason. There's no questions about that. We saw, the last month or two of the year with Kaiway Tang, Carson Seymour, Tristan Beck, those guys starting games for the Giants in crunch time. That's just not necessarily who you want to see on the bump when you're in the middle of a playoff race. You're trying to win a wild card spot. You need more solidified guys in the back end of your rotation, and Justin Verlander is that. Obviously, you have Webb, Ray, and Roop at the top of your rotation currently heading into 2026, but bringing back Verlander does make a lot of sense as, the number 5. I would assume the Giants signed multiple starters this offseason, so Verlander and maybe a higher contract guy, but we'll see what happens. Verlander does make a lot of sense when you have younger guys like Birdsong, Wisenhunt, just starting their careers. Verlander's obviously a guy who's done it for a long time and has seen what the top of Major League Baseball looks like. So it would make a lot of sense for Buster Posey to bring him back. And out of the three guys we are going to be talking about in this video, Verlander is definitely the one with the highest likelihood of coming back to San Francisco and returning to the Giants. However, there will be several teams interested in his talents this time around. I know last year there weren't a lot of teams interested just because he was going to be 42. He's coming off the worst year of his career, but now he showed that he can still perform at the major league level. Even at age 42, he's going to be 43 heading into next season. So it will be an interesting offseason, and it'll be interesting to see where Justin Verlander ends up as opening day approaches in 2026. Now, next we have Dominic Smith. He's an interesting case because obviously he wasn't on the opening day roster this year. He's a guy that came in later in the year, only 225 plate appearances, which isn't a huge sample, but he really did turn into one of the Giants' best players throughout the course of the year. A 111 WRC plus, weighted runs created plus, and for those that don't know, a score of 100 in that category is league average, so anything above that you are technically an above average hitter in Major League Baseball. Slash 284, 333, 417. Only 5 home runs, but a couple big ones when the Giants were in the playoff race. 2 stolen bases, 33 RBIs. But one thing I noticed with Dom Smith is for a Giants team that really, really struggled to get runners home, runners in scoring positions all year, Dom Smith was one of those guys where you felt fairly confident with him at the plate with a runner at second or third that he would just poke a base hit between, shortstop and third base. He'd poke a bloop into right field, something of that sort. Dom Smith did become one of the better hitters on this Giants team throughout the course of this year, which was such a surprising development throughout this season because he was brought in as a AAA signing after, Lamont Wade Jr. was DFA'd. He had a horrible start to the year. They brought in Dom Smith, and he really gave them some production at first base, which was their worst production position early in the year, which was so surprising. So Dom Smith, a really strong year, but unfortunately it does not seem like he will be returning to the San Francisco Giants. This is from AroundTheFoghorn.com. It says, I think it describes this pretty perfectly. It says, however, there are two sides to every discussion. The Giants might want to bring him back, but does that type of move make sense for Smith? The Giants already have coverage at first base with Rafael Devers, and that will not change anytime soon. Smith could see at-bats at DH early in the year if Bryce Eldridge begins the year in the minors. Once Eldridge is up, Smith's playing time likely disappears overnight. And I think this is the main reason why Smith, one of two reasons why Smith won't be back. The first, obviously, is there's a pretty big log or jam at first base. Obviously, Rafael Devers, Bryce Eldridge, these two guys are going to be your two first basemen of the future. You expect these guys to be manning first base and DH for the next 5+ years at least. So that is one reason why Smith does not make a lot of sense, and Devers and Eldridge are both left-handed hitters. Now, on the opposite side of things, like Around the Foghorn mentions here, other teams are going to want Dom Smith, possibly as their starting first baseman heading into the season. I know he wasn't a big name signing for the Giants this year, obviously in the middle of the year. He didn't get picked up by a team for a major league contract last offseason, but he had arguably the best offensive season of his career this season outside of the COVID 2020 year where he had a little power outburst. But this year, Dom Smith was a very good Major League Baseball player. He scooped it pretty well at first base, some critical digs. We haven't even talked about that stretch he made against the Dodgers to really help secure that win on that Friday night. Even though it didn't lead to any playoffs for the Giants, it was still a huge pay at that point in time for the San Francisco Giants. Obviously, that ended in injury that had him sidelined for the remainder of the season. But he was one of the Giants' most productive hitters throughout 2025, and I do think that there's a very high chance that he gets a couple $1 million to start at first base for a team like, I don't know, the A's or the Rockies, the White Sox, one of these lower teams that need some everyday hitters. He's definitely a guy that is eligible to be that type of guy, and I do think that is another reason why he will not be returning to the San Francisco Giants. Now, the last guy that we are going to talk about is Wilmer Flores, the longest tenured Giant of this little bunch. This is what he did in 2025 /241, 307, 379 for a 95 WRC plus. He did have 71 RBIs. The first third of the year, he was one of the best run producers in Major League Baseball. Just anytime there was someone on second or third, he seemed to get the clutch hit. He was hitting a couple home runs earlier in the year. He had that 3 home run night, which was really when things turned negatively for Wilmer Flores. But overall, a fairly productive season. It really just depends if Wilmer wants to keep playing, but it does seem like his time with the Giants has unfortunately come to an end. We did see in game 162, the last game of the year, which I was actually in attendance for, Wilmer Flores got a very nice standing ovation. Bob Melvin brought in Bryce Eldridge mid-game and gave Flores his moment. It really seems like the Giants kind of know he's not going to be returning. They don't have any interest in bringing him back, as it seems right now. And he got his little ovation. He got his moment with the Giants because he has been a very underrated Giant throughout his tenure. For a guy who a lot of people see as a New York Met primarily, he's now spent the same amount of years with the Giants as he did with the Mets, 6 seasons. So I do think that you can simultaneously see him as a San Francisco Giant and a New York Met. He had some very big moments with the Giants. Obviously, just this year, the 3 home run game, a couple big walk-offs, a walk-off single, a walk-off walk against Mason Miller. He was just a guy who, when it was a clutch situation, bottom of the 11th inning with a runner on second, or even the bottom of the 9th with a runner on first base, he's the guy you wanted up to bat, giving your team the best chance to win the ball game. So hats off to Wilmer Flores. He had a an amazing tenure with the San Francisco Giants, and one that should not be taken for granted. He was on that 2021 team that won 107 games. He was a big platoon piece of that team at first base, DH. So thank you, Wilmer Flores, for a great 6 seasons with the San Francisco Giants, but unfortunately, it does seem like it is coming to an end. Overall, these 3 guys were pretty big contributors for the Giants, even if it wasn't in 2025 with Wilmer Flores in the past seasons, had some big moments. But Verlander, a very strong year for a guy that was 42 years old for the majority of the season. Dom Smith, a guy who nobody expected to come in and be a real contributor, but turned out being one of the Giants' most consistent hitters throughout the majority of 2025. And then Wilmer Flores, a guy who has had some great service time with the San Francisco Giants, but unfortunately seems like it is most likely coming to an end. Let me know down in the comments what you think Buster Posey should do in terms of these 3 guys. I'm sure there's interest in bringing all of them back a little bit, but it does seem like Justin Verlander is the one guy who stands out a little bit with the highest likelihood of returning to the San Francisco Giants and being in the starting rotation to open the 2026 season. But let me know down in the comments what you think will happen with these 3 guys, and make sure to subscribe to SF Giants Digest.